$200 million. Say that number out loud. Now say it again while looking at a bank account with nothing in it. Most people stop there, at the distance between those two things, and decide the gap is the point, that the gap is the story, that the gap means it isn't for them. But here's what nobody tells you about the car wash business specifically. The gap isn't filled by a loan you can't get or a contact you don't have or some secret handshake at a country club you'll never be invited to. It's filled by a scoreboard, a very small scoreboard, and the first number on it isn't 200 million. It's $42. That's the average ticket on a mobile detail job in a mid-size market. Exterior wash, basic interior wipe down, tire shine. $42, and if that sounds like the opposite of empire building, you're thinking about it wrong, because you're thinking about it as a ceiling when it's actually a proof of concept. Every company that eventually owns a platform worth 9 figures had a version of a Tuesday where someone handed them $42 for a thing they could repeat. So here's level 1. You don't lease a building. You don't buy equipment. You don't file anything complicated. You pick a lane and you pick it based on one question only. What gets me to a paying customer in the fewest days with the least capital destroyed? For most people starting from zero, that answer is one of 3 things. Mobile detailing with a used pressure washer and a bucket in the back of whatever vehicle you already own. Pop-up wash days in an apartment complex parking lot on a Saturday. Or a single leased bay at an existing self-serve car wash where the owner is tired and the price is negotiable. Each one of these has a different risk profile and a different ceiling, but all 3 share the same function. They let you touch real economics before you spend real money. Mobile detailing has the lowest barrier and the highest hustle cost. You are the machine. You show up, you work, you leave. The number you're watching isn't revenue. It's margin per hour because your time is the only capital you're actually spending. Pop-up wash days in apartment complexes let you batch jobs in a fixed location, which means lower travel costs per car and a natural audience already sitting in their units wondering what to do with a Saturday. The single leased bay is the most expensive of the 3 entry points, but it introduces something the other 2 don't, a fixed address, which is the first seed of a real customer habit. Whichever lane you pick, the scoreboard is the same. 4 numbers, average ticket, cars per day, chemical and labor cost per car. Break-even volume, write them down, run them every week. If you detail cars yourself, your labor cost per car is the hourly rate you'd have to pay someone else to do what you just did, because the moment you stop showing up, you need to know if the business survives without you. That's not a philosophical question. That's unit economics. A mobile detail job at $42 with $8 in chemicals and supplies and roughly $20 in imputed labor leaves you $14 in gross margin per car. To cover $200 a week in vehicle costs and basic insurance, you need to move 15 cars before you're working for yourself. 15 cars is not an empire. 15 cars is a Tuesday and a Saturday. But 15 cars is also the moment the proof exists. Customer acquisition at this level has one rule: do not spend money to get customers when you can spend time instead. The highest leverage move available to someone with no marketing budget is a phone call to the used car lot 3 miles away. Every dealer in your market has 40 to 80 cars sitting on a lot that need to look clean before someone buys them. They need this done reliably on a schedule at a price they can predict. You walk in with a per unit price and a turnaround guarantee, and you just bought yourself a recurring revenue stream with one conversation. Apartment complex managers work the same way. One agreement with a 300-unit building and you've got a built-in audience for pop-up wash days without spending $1 on ads. The pre-sold membership is the move that changes the math faster than anything else. You don't need a building to sell a membership. You need a commitment. 10 people who pay $30 a month for 2 washes gets you $300 in guaranteed revenue before you've touched a single car that month. That's not passive income. That's a floor, and a floor is the thing that lets you stop thinking about survival long enough to think about the next level. The first tiny moat gets built with 3 things: speed, consistency, and upsells that don't add complexity. Interior vacuum at an extra $12. Headlight restoration at $25. Ceramic spray coating at $15. None of these require new equipment you don't already own. All of them raise the average ticket without adding a new customer or a new day. The guy who shows up on time, does the same quality job every time, and offers one simple upgrade at checkout beats the cheaper competitor, not because he's cheaper, but because he's predictable. Predictability is worth money to a dealer. It's worth money to a busy professional who doesn't want to think about it. And then one day the scoreboard changes on you. Not dramatically. Quietly. The weekly numbers stop varying the way they used to. Demand is there when you show up for it. The retained earnings sitting in the account are no longer all spoken for by next week's costs. You start doing math on paper that involves a fixed location, a lease, a sign, a door that's open 6 days a week whether you're standing there or not. That's not ambition talking. That's the trigger. That's level 3 knocking. And now you know what you're walking into. The door that's open whether you're standing there or not. That's the sentence that keeps running in your head when you start shopping real sites. Because level 3 isn't about you working harder. It's about building something that works without you, and the first decision it forces is one most people skip past too fast. What kind of car wash are you actually building? 3 models. Each one a different bet. In-bay automatic. The box with the spinning brushes. One car goes in, one car comes out. You can run it with minimal staff, maybe nobody at all during off-peak hours. Capital to build or buy one runs somewhere between 400,000 and $1.2 million depending on age, condition, and real estate. Throughput ceiling is roughly 15 to 20 cars per hour at absolute best, usually less. The margin per car can be strong, but the revenue ceiling is capped by physics. One bay, one car at a time. Express tunnel. Conveyor pulls the car through while the customer sits inside. You can move 60, 80, even 100 plus cars per hour at peak with the right setup. Build cost comes in higher, often $1.5 to $3 million or more for new construction. Labor is higher too. You need attendants at the entry point, dryers, vacuums, the exit lane. But the throughput math is where this model wins, and winning on throughput is how the big operators got big. The tunnel is the platform. Everything else is a feature you bolt onto it. Flex serve is the middle path. Full service elements, hand dry, interior wipe, window cleaning, a tunnel or in-bay doing the exterior work. Highest average ticket per car, sometimes twice what an express does. But labor is heavier, throughput drops, and the consistency problem gets harder every time you add a human hand to the process. Flex serve can work well in the right market. It doesn't scale the same way. Your first real site probably isn't a brand new tunnel. It's an existing location you're taking over, refinancing, or converting. The model you inherit shapes every number downstream. Now the pricing. And this is where most first-time operators lose money quietly, not from bad cars, but from bad menus. Good, better, best. 3 tiers. Always 3. The bottom tier exists to capture the price-sensitive customer who was going to leave anyway if you didn't have something cheap enough to stop them. The top tier exists to make the middle tier feel like a reasonable decision. Nobody goes to a restaurant and orders the cheapest bottle of wine because it's the cheapest. They order the second one up because it feels like they're not being reckless. Your wash menu works the same way. Price the top tier high enough that choosing it feels like treating yourself. Price the middle tier so that declining to the bottom feels like giving something up. What you're protecting against is the race to the bottom. Every market has an operator running a special. 99-cent Tuesday, dollar wash weekend. You do not follow them down that road. You compete on certainty and quality, not on who can bleed out slower. The upsell ladder sits on top of the tier menu. Ceramic coating spray, tire shine, interior air freshener, rain repellent on the glass. Each one costs you between 50 cents and $1.50 in chemical. Each one adds $3 to $7 to the ticket. You don't pitch all of them. You build them into the better and best tiers and let the menu do the selling for you. The membership engine is the mechanism that changes what the site actually is. A car wash without memberships is a transaction business. A car wash with memberships is a recurring revenue business. Those are valued differently, financed differently, and survive differently through bad weather months. You're converting a one-time wash into a $30, $40, $55 monthly debit that hits on the first regardless of whether that customer ever shows up. The ones who show up 7 times a month are subsidized by the ones who show up once. That's not predatory. That's gym math, and everyone already understands gym math. Churn is the number you lose sleep over at level 3. A 2% monthly churn rate on a base of 500 members means you're replacing 10 people a month just to stay flat. Your acquisition engine has to outrun that number before you can call the membership base growing. Operations is where margin either holds or leaks out silently. Staffing ratios matter. Chemical dilution matters. Rewash policies cost you real money if they're too loose and real customers if they're too tight. Maintenance cadence on the tunnel equipment is the one that surprises most first-timers. Deferred maintenance on a conveyor system doesn't show up as a line item until it shows up as a 4-day shutdown and $15,000 you didn't have reserved. The location-level financial model comes down to 2 levers and 4 cost buckets. Levers, cars per hour and hours open. Every incremental car per hour across a 10-hour day is 10 more cars. 10 more cars at a $40 average ticket is $400 in daily revenue before you've changed a single price. Cost buckets, debt service or rent, labor, utilities, chemicals, and repairs. If those 4 buckets consume more than 65 to 70% of revenue, the site isn't a platform. It's a job with a building attached. The decision rule for duplication is not complicated. When a single site has 12 months of operating history, a stable membership base with visible growth, margins that hold without you personally filling in labor gaps, and debt coverage that doesn't flinch under a slow weather month, that site is bankable. Not before. A lender doesn't fund your optimism. They fund a proven unit that tells them what the next one probably looks like. The first site isn't the destination, it's the evidence. So the first site is the evidence. Now you have to decide what to do with it. Because a single bankable location sitting at healthy margins doesn't make you a multi-site operator. It makes you a person holding a proof of concept and a decision. And the decision isn't whether to expand, it's how fast, with whose money, and what breaks first when you try to run the same play twice. The capital stack changes at every level, and each new layer of financing comes with a new set of people who want to know things. Early growth, sites 2 and 3, usually runs on reinvested cash flow mixed with SBA or conventional bank debt. The SBA 7A and 504 programs exist specifically for this kind of build, owner-operated, hard assets, proven cash flow, bankable real estate. Your lender wants 2 years of operating history, a clean debt service coverage ratio, usually a minimum of 1.25, and a personal guarantee you're going to sign whether you're comfortable with it or not. The reporting is straightforward. Monthly P&Ls, membership counts, debt coverage. You can manage it with a spreadsheet and a decent bookkeeper. Site 4 and 5 changes the conversation. Now you're introducing outside equity, investors who want preferred returns, capital call structures, and quarterly reporting that looks more like a private equity deck than a gas station ledger. Each new layer of money is a layer of accountability. That's not a complaint. It's the tuition. The operators who skip past it by growing faster than their reporting systems can handle are the ones who discover at site 6 that they have no idea which sites are actually making money and which ones are quietly bleeding into the ones that are. The replication playbook is what separates a second location from a system. Site selection comes first, and it's less glamorous than it sounds. Traffic counts matter more than gut feeling. You want the ingress and egress question answered before you fall in love with a building, because a site you can't turn into easily from the dominant traffic direction will underperform by 15 to 20% compared to an identical site you can. Water access, discharge permits, and municipal rules around reclaim systems will add time and cost to the build that no pro forma you wrote in a coffee shop accounted for. Permitting delays are the silent killer of projected returns. A 4-month delay on a site burning $40,000 a month in carrying costs is $160,000 of return you are never getting back. You build that possibility into your underwriting or you learn it the painful way. The build and retrofit checklist is not exciting. It is the most important document you will create. Equipment vendors, chemical suppliers, signage companies, point-of-sale systems, all of it gets standardized the moment you cross into Site 2. Not because standardization is philosophically beautiful, but because training a manager on 4 different systems costs you the kind of time that doesn't show up on a P&L until you're 3 months into a struggling site wondering why throughput never ramped. The opening week ramp plan deserves its own document. You have roughly 60 days to establish membership habit in a new trade area before the window tightens. Pre-sell memberships before you open. Run a grand opening week that treats the first 500 cars like they're auditioning to be members. Your conversion rate in those first 60 days sets the membership floor you will be managing off of for the next year. Systems and SOPs are where your margin actually lives now. Mystery shops on a rotating schedule tell you what your managers report to you versus what actually happens when you're not watching. Quality control tied to rewash rates, throughput variance, and chemical usage per car creates a feedback loop that you can manage from a dashboard instead of from a broom. Manager incentives get redesigned here. You stop paying for hours and start tying bonuses to controllable metrics: membership growth, churn rate, labor as a percentage of revenue, and net promoter scores from exit surveys. When the manager's check is connected to the same numbers you review on Sunday night, the site starts managing itself in the direction you intended. Portfolio management is the skill nobody teaches you. A weak site at month 18 is a decision point, not a character test. You are not failing if you close a location that never found its membership base. You are failing if you keep subsidizing it with cash from the sites that work because you don't want to admit the underwrite was wrong. The question is always repositioning versus closure, and the honest answer usually lives in the traffic data and the real estate cost, not in how much you've already spent. The milestone that matters most at level 5 and 6 has nothing to do with a car count. It's the moment you walk one of your sites for the first time in 3 weeks, and it looks exactly the way it would have if you'd been there every day. That is when you know you've built a bench. Regional oversight, a layer of management between you and the sites, becomes possible only when the SOPs are tight enough that the manager knows what right looks like without you standing next to them defining it. You are not the operator anymore. You are the standard setter. The sites run the operation. You run the business that owns them. At some point, the language changes on you. You stop talking about sites and start talking about a portfolio. You stop tracking weekly car counts and start watching same-store sales growth quarter over quarter. The business you set out to build one tunnel at a time has become something that requires a different vocabulary, a different set of metrics, and a different kind of discipline than the one that got you here. That transition is where most operators stall, not because they built something wrong, because they keep measuring it the same way they did when they had 2 locations and a bookkeeper working out of a shared Google Drive. At 7 sites, 10 sites, 15, the metrics that matter are institutional now. Same-store sales growth tells you whether your existing base is getting stronger or if all your revenue momentum is just new sites masking a mature portfolio that's quietly softening. Membership churn is the number you should be losing sleep over. A 4% monthly churn rate sounds modest until you do the math on a 10,000 member base and realize you're replacing 400 members every single month just to stay flat. EBITDA per site, not total EBITDA, per site, tells you which locations are carrying the portfolio and which ones are passengers. CapEx discipline is the metric that separates operators from empire builders. Every dollar you spend refreshing equipment, repaving, and upgrading technology either earns a return or it doesn't. You track it the same way you track revenue, and your leverage ratio, debt relative to EBITDA, becomes the number your lenders and your future buyers will use to decide what you're worth and whether they trust you with their capital. The M&A chapter opens quietly. You stop building every new site from dirt and start looking at what's already standing. There are more under-optimized car washes in any regional market than most people realize. Owner-operators who built a solid location 10 years ago never converted to membership, never invested in express tunnel throughput, never hired past themselves. They are sitting on a real asset with weak economics, which means they are sitting on your opportunity. The buy versus build decision comes down to one honest comparison. Can you acquire this site, retrofit it to your standard, and achieve your target membership base faster and cheaper than building a new tunnel on a greenfield site? Sometimes yes, often no, and the discipline is in being cold enough about the math to walk away when the answer is no. Your integration checklist is what protects you from the romance of a deal. Equipment audit, water and discharge compliance review, existing membership count and churn history, staff assessment, point-of-sale migration, and a 60-day ramp plan that mirrors the one you use for new builds. You do not close on a site without every item on that checklist answered in writing. The ones who skip the checklist in the excitement of a deal signed are the ones spending the following 6 months discovering what the seller already knew. The moat at this level is not the tunnels. Any well-capitalized competitor can build a tunnel. The moat is density, consistency, and data. When you have 8 locations in a single metro area, your brand starts to function like infrastructure. Members who move across town don't cancel. They stay. Your data on pricing sensitivity, peak throughput windows, and churn triggers by membership tier becomes an operational edge that a single-site operator cannot replicate. Location density also changes your negotiating position with chemical suppliers, equipment vendors, and lenders in ways that compound quietly over time. Operational excellence is not a culture statement. It is the accumulated result of tight SOPs, a trained bench of managers who know what right looks like, and a feedback loop of mystery shops and metrics that catches drift before it becomes a trend. The valuation logic is what makes all of this legible to an outside buyer. Private equity firms and strategic acquirers do not buy car wash portfolios. They buy recurring revenue with predictable churn, clean EBITDA with documented margins, and a management team that doesn't require the founder in the building to function. Membership-based revenue gets a different multiple than transactional revenue. It is more predictable, more defensible, and more attractive to the kind of capital that prices businesses at 7, 8, or 9 times EBITDA instead of 4. Clean financials mean audited statements, site-level P&Ls that match your system reporting, and a CapEx history that shows discipline rather than deferred maintenance. When those 2 things are true, the multiple expansion alone can be worth more than years of incremental revenue growth. Risk at scale is not more dramatic than risk at one site. It is just quieter and more systemic. Environmental compliance around water reclaim and discharge permitting becomes a liability issue rather than a line item when you have 15 locations and one site that's been cutting corners someone didn't report up the chain. Downtime planning for equipment failure across a multi-site portfolio requires redundancy agreements with service vendors and documented escalation paths. Reputation management in a membership-driven business means a bad customer experience that goes viral doesn't just hurt one site. It touches every renewal conversation across the entire portfolio that month. Here is what the whole progression actually is: a unit economics problem solved one level at a time. A single site that proves the model. A replication playbook that survives contact with a second and third location. A capital stack that grows as the evidence does. A portfolio managed by metrics instead of instinct. And a clean, documented, membership-driven business that a buyer can underwrite without you in the room explaining it? Find one market. Run the numbers on one site. Prove it works before you raise a dollar for the second. The operators who built $200 million from a single tunnel didn't start with a vision of $200 million. They started with a spreadsheet that made sense on one piece of real estate and had the discipline to keep making it make sense, one site at a time, until the math got too big to ignore.